Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel, where everything you're about to hear and see has been done in one take. I'm your host, the One Take Man. A few months ago, as of the time of this video's release, the Buffy the Vampire Slayer revival that was initially scheduled for, was originally slated to be released or and maybe even produced by Hulu, has been canceled. And I have to say, while it was getting going, I think it's fair to say that it has actually garnered some interest, and I personally wasn't opposed to the idea. I thought it actually had some. I actually thought it could have some interesting things going for it. But then, the more things got revealed, the more skepticism started to emerge around it. Still, mm, while those ideas did elicit skepticism, I was actually fine with. I was actually fine with them. I recognize that they all had at least some level of potential. Even the most controversial among them, the idea that Buffy would actually end up with Riley, is something that I personally, didn't have, didn't really find too much issue with. I very much think that um, even that could have been made to work. However, as of as of as of right now, both at the time of this video's production and at the time it comes out, we are likely not going to we're not likely not going to find that out. But still, I wanted to explore the ideas that that would have emerged that would have emerged as a result of uh, or rather, I wanted to explore what I think would be the most logical conclusion and aftermath that would result from, that would result from that. What the and explore what this revival, which many people have wrongly called a reboot, would actually consist of. So that is what this video, as its title will have already revealed, will be about. Also, apologies if I sound a little bit under the weather. I went hunting recently and all I caught was this cold. By the way, my Coke says bi people are valid. Sorry about that. So, going off of what has already been announced, the show is going to feature Buffy as a mentor character mentoring a new Slayer, with the action taking place, or with the series itself taking place in New Sunnydale, a Sunnydale that will have been rebuilt after the series finale, where where it was basically raised off the face of the earth. So, so we know at least one thing that will have happened in the 25 years since the ending of Chosen, aka this moment right here, and what happens, what happens when when the revival was set to begin. But there is one major thing that the revival, or that none of the information that I've noticed being revealed about the revival didn't really cover. Namely, what exactly what happened to the broader world, and therefore uh, uh, what would the impact of the actual conclusion of Buffy the Vampire Slayer be, given that all potentials are now activated. Well, funnily enough, the show itself does actually offer some hints towards that particular answer. And the first of these hints actually comes from season 4, namely with the initiative. For those of you who don't remember, the initiative was part of was part of the season 4 plot. It was an organization under the that was under the United States government, or the United States Armed Forces to be more precise, which aimed to classify and weaponize the supernatural. And I can basically guarantee that if the United States had an idea to do something like that, then very likely its the geopolitical rivals and maybe even some of its allies will have also considered doing something similar. And as such, they would have naturally gravitated towards, they would have naturally gravitated towards slayers, towards, you know, girls and young women who have seemingly, have seemingly supernatural abilities. Uh, the exact nature of the relationship between such organizations and and the women in particular very much depends on the very much depends uh, uh, on the gender dynamics of those respective countries, which are ruled by those respective governments, and also they depend on the penetrative power that the government has, or rather the influence that it has over general society. It would, for example, be very tempting to consider uh, China, given that the CCP has one of the largest and most uh, complex, espionage systems in the world. That they would immediately try to uh, round up every Slayer that they could find. And even assuming that to be what they would actually do, uh, there are a variety of remote areas as well, and not to mention resistance movements, secret societies, that kind of stuff, or areas where maybe not where China or maybe other governments don't really have the same level of don't really have the same level of control over their citizenry as they would have in more centralized areas. So in that sense, when it comes to dealing with slayers, a lot of areas all around the world would have a lot of very different approaches. What would the effect of those approaches actually be? Well, in order to answer that, we need to look at how many slayers actually exist within the world, and I think the best place to look at that answer is actually the very first slayer to have ever existed, who hasn't been named within the series, but which I think apocryphal sources have called Sinea or something like that. Not much is known about her except that she has been made a slayer by the Shadow Men, basically shamans of the basically shamans of a prehistoric Earth society that would have been based in Africa. And funnily enough, there is actually an equivalent point in the history of the human species, the where from which Sinea could have potentially originated, and that point is from roughly, I'm gonna say, 50,000 years ago, when humanity as a species was actually on the brink of extinction. Obviously they found a way to deal with it, and I imagine that within the Buffyverse something equivalent happened, and the Shadow Men, or the early shamans of this friend society, will have chosen a girl from the a girl from the remaining groups of humanity, and and really given her the and really empowered her to to where she could stand up against supernatural threats that would threaten this community. So but how big would that community have been? Well, as I said, the humanity at the time was on the brink of extinction, so there were so and therefore it had very small numbers. But even very small doesn't really mean doesn't particularly mean that much. I think it's safe to say somewhere between 5,000 and 50,000 people. So if there are 5,000 to so if at their inception Slayers were there was a one Slayer per five to 50,000 people percentage, then I think it is safe to say that in a and that in the modern world, with a population of about 8.3 billion people, then the number of slayers would vary between 1.7 million and 170,000. Which sounds like a lot, but keep in mind it's dispersed among the entire world. In that sense, so in that sense, it is so in that sense, slayers are unlikely to have that much of an impact. Like, keep in mind, trans people are 1% of the world's population, and yet there are still people who, who insist that any kind of, that any kind of trans identity uh, outgrowths thereof are are either are a sign of mental illness. If trans people aren't really gonna uh, move the needle to a sizable degree, I think it is safe to say that slayers also don't we you know won't really move the needle in a political sense to a sizable degree, even if they are targeted by by various social endeavors. That being said, I imagine there would still be some kind of a taboo around around slayers, because while they are because they might not be numerous enough to where they to where they make significant societal shifts, but they are still significant enough to where they are to where they would be a rumor, ghost, a phantom, something typically talked about in hushed tones. And like with most taboos, I imagine it's a taboo that would be quite pronounced among among adult populations, who would try to keep it hush hush. So in the context of our society, that would be millennials and perhaps older Zoomers, and also those above. With everyone younger than that, so young Zoomers and Gen Alpha, very much being a little bit more open, or at least a little bit more curious about it. And it is within that space that they would that the protagonists of this revival would be growing up, knowing about Slayers, but not really getting the full picture, and likely being torn between a whole variety of different messages about whether about, on the one hand, them potentially having a protective role, or about how they are, I don't know, spawns of Satan or something like that. Now that we've established the background, it's time we dipped into the actual into our actual leads, starting with the main character, the new Slayer. I am, however, going to be using pictures from the pictures from Buffy the Vampire Slayer to to illustrate my points. By the way, all of these pictures stem from the Buffy fandom wiki. I do not claim any ownership of any of the images presented here. So anyway, the new Slayer, let's call her Zoe, would very much grow up in that environment where Slayers are perceived as either dangerous or protectors, and the exact nature of how exactly that influences the person is very much dependent on the background of each individual opinion holder. And there would potentially be some rumors about within hushed tones regarding, oh, who could be the Slayer, or who could be a potential and who will find themselves activated upon their 16th birthday. And the show would start with Zoe, on the eve of her 16th birthday, and I imagine her personality would be somewhat similar to the one, to the one Buffy had in the original script, though perhaps a little bit toned down. As in, I imagine she would be a little bit of a little bit of a fashionista, and she might be interested in boys, but but more in an abstract sense rather than a concrete sense. She would talk about what it is that about what it is that she would want in a partner, more so that she would talk about for example, how hot the swimming team captain is. So, in that sense, she is very much a high school level socialite and a little bit of and potentially a little bit of a fashionista. But her interest isn't really in this. But really, that should set the stage. That her interest primarily isn't really in this Slayer stuff. It's really in her own. It's really within her own sphere to the extent to the extent to which she recognizes it. Next character I want to talk about is actually her rival, who will be the Cordelia stand-in. And this and Cordelia, at least in high school, was was a queen bee in the the worst sense of the way. Very eager to put down very eager to put down other girls, even even her and even assert dominance over her over those she would call her friends, and very much just drawn to the to the team because she recognizes that there is something sizable there, and she wants to get herself involved with something sizable, something noteworthy, more than she wants to actually uh, help them on their endeavor. Uh, to some extent, she is to some extent an anti-feminist in high school. I think there is at least one fan website or fan theory website or fan like discussion website that that calls her that calls Cordelia, the initial Cordelia, basically a proto-fascist. And I kind of want this new Cordelia to also play within those to also play within those parameters. However, because our understanding of fascism will have changed since the 90s, then I think so should this new Cordelia be. She should be less like she should be less Phyllis Schlafly, more more Margaret Thatcher. She's the kind of girl when told that she should marry a rich man, she would instead reply that she will be the rich man. And I imagine she would still be. I imagine she would. Like Buffy, she would still be somewhat of a fashionista. They would kind of have a silent, discreet, a silent and perhaps not exactly discreet rivalry regarding who it is that can, who it is that can showcase themselves better between the two of them. But here's the kicker: I actually want her to be at least somewhat academically gifted. I want her to be able to, I want her to be able to piece things together and really establish herself as someone who wants someone who wants admiration, but for reasons that are considered correct by by someone from her parents' generation, so to speak. Next up, the next character I want to talk about would be the Willow stand-in, who I imagine would be Zoe's best friend. Zoe, if you'll keep in mind, is the Buffy stand-in, the protagonist of this new series. And I also want her to be academically gifted, potentially rivaling Cordelia's stand-in, but also she would very much be she would very much be a nerd. And I don't necessarily mean a pop culture nerd, but more like an esoteric nerd. Like she would have she would very much be drawn into this world of the supernatural that will have will have opened up, and she will she'll read into it, try to learn as much about it as possible. I don't rule out her potentially starting out trying to learn some spells, maybe have some levels in magic already, but but I'm not necessarily sure whether or to what extent that would actually matter or impact her day-to-day life. Now let's go on to the men of this new Scooby Gang, because yes, I do actually want to include some some male characters within this group, even though I know a whole bunch of even though I have to say I'm uh, through Twitter I'm connected to a lot of lesbian fans, and they all have some very unkind words about the about the male characters of the Buffyverse, Xander in particular, and and I actually see the point, and really the men of the Buffyverse have aged in some very peculiar ways, if I may say so myself. With with a lot of their with their dualities, not necessarily with their dualities or their complexities, mm, you know, not always being acknowledged, some being somewhat flattened. And in order to avoid that, I actually want to lean into lean into those complexities a little bit with, when talking about the men and, or rather, male characters in this case, because we're still talking about high schoolers, and I want to do so by contrasting them, by contrasting not just various features of them, but also contrasting these features in each other. Basically, what I want to do is I want this meme. For those who are for those who are having trouble reading, it says jock who's surprisingly well read versus nerd who's secretly ripped. And then these photos are on the one hand of James T. Kirk from Star Trek and of Jean-Luc Picard from Star Trek. Implying that Kirk is the well-read jock and that Jean-Luc Picard is the ripped nerd. Funny thing is, if you actually know anything about Star Trek lore, these characters actually belong the opposite. These labels are actually, should actually be switched around, because with Kirk actually being the ripped nerd and Picard the well-read jock, but but that's beside the point. The point is that I want, this new Scooby Gang to have two guys, two male characters. One would very much be a more traditional, well-bred man, someone who maybe has some level of, someone who is has some kind of traditional sport that he is, that he has attached himself to, maybe boxing, maybe swimming, something like that. But also, I also imagine him having a being well read, and also and they're well read and being very book smart, very aware of very aware of literature, very aware of stuff like stuff like poetry, symbolism, etc. etc. So etc. So he would basically be the traditional heartthrob of the group. The other guy would be would be a little bit more nerdy, more perhaps more in common, would perhaps be more of a pop culture nerd, and therefore and therefore more stereotypical of that of that particular inclination. However, he would also have a perhaps secret passion for eskrima, or some other kind of some other kind of martial art. Because I think that gives him plenty of I think it gives him plenty of depth, plenty of things to for him to actually. Wait just a minute, I want to see something. Okay, there's a truck out there trying to jackknife, so that's kind of what distracted me. Anyway, back on topic. Um, so as I was saying, as I was saying, the male characters of this new Scooby Gang are a well-read guy who is into who also has some level of who was also enlisted in one of Sunnydale High's sports clubs, and the other character is more and has a more refined presentation. Though I imagine he could still take a little bit of an anti-feminist bent due to due to the due to some of the writings that he has assimilated, not being very progressive on gender and not being very progressive on gender in their own right. And the other would be a pop culture nerd, someone who very much is on the respect women juice, and also has an interest in some kind of obscure martial art, or in or in wielding some unusual weaponry. And the first episode of this revival would basically see, would basically be an introduction to these characters, or rather, I would say the first third or the first half would showcase them, in high school, establish their connections to each other, as well as their connections to the rest of the school, potentially establishing some teachers or colleagues as fellow high school goers as future villains for the series moving ahead. and when the high school is over, I imagine these characters, and by these characters I actually mean Zoe, the Willow stand-in, and the two boys, uh, coming together, doing some kind of activity by themselves, and then walking home. And when we walk home, we get to see Zoe's family life. Now the traditional thing to do when it comes to American television is to basically have the main character be an only child of divorce, because that way you only have to introduce one parent and no other siblings. To be honest, I say screw that. I say this the Slayer of this new series should have a full family life. Not just in order to establish some contrast, but also in order for this show to have more characters which it can play around with. And as a stand-in for that entire family, I'm going to choose the mayor. Yeah, the mayor is basically the picture I've chosen to, for you to see while I talk about Zoe's family life. And I didn't choose him just because actually chose him for a reason. Namely, I imagined that Zoe's mom would actually be the mayor of New Sunnydale. Her dad, I think, would actually be the head nurse of the Sunnydale Hospital. Not exactly sure what it would be called, but he would be the head nurse there. And then she would also have two older siblings, one brother, one sister. The brother already graduated high school and is working as a sanitation engineer or garbage man, depending on which term you prefer. And the sister, I imagine would be a senior in college. So in that sense, it is likely that she would only be a regular for the first season and then move out, and then move out to and have guest appearances for the rest of the series. And I think Zoe would have somewhat cordial relationships with everyone. Though I imagine she might be a little bit more, a little bit colder towards her sister. Uh, though I could imagine potentially playing around with that, in that while her relationship to her sister is colder, it's also more genuine, and the relationship between between Zoe and the rest of her family is potentially warmer, but she is more putting on a front on their behalf. So anyway, uh, we meet her family, we get to know them, and then she goes to bed. And when she goes to bed, she has obviously prophetic dreams. This book comes up along with a whole variety of demons doing a whole bunch of stuff, And yeah, some of these demons will also show up as will also show up as villains in the would also show up as villains in the forthcoming episodes. And, and over the course of this, and at some point towards the end of this dream, she will have she will she will hear sort of in a voiceover and potentially even see Buffy herself saying, "Congratulations, you're a Slayer." And then she will like start startle awake and go, "Oh fuck, I'm a Slayer. I've been called." While this happens, I imagine that there would. I think the next moment after that is to is to potentially cut to some vampires in their lair and show that the vampires have, and I imagine that lair being, being decked out in a whole bunch of magic paraphernalia. Because keep in mind, now that there are more slayers, any remaining vamps will have to step up their game, so to speak, and therefore, and and arm themselves, improve their magical abilities, magical equipment, magical know-how, so they would be able to, so they can extend their, so they could extend their existence. And these vampires would immediately, would immediately be like, "Oh, there's another one. Good thing we've prepared for this. It's time it's time we set our plans and it's time we set our plan into motion and and try to eliminate her." The next scene would occur early next morning with Zoe, the freshly minted Slayer, now now going down and uh, dreading having to meet her family with this with this new revelation in mind. Only she doesn't meet the whole family; she just meets her sister. And yes, I'm using Dawn, who is a younger sister, as a stand-in for the older sister. Just just bear with me for a while. and and Zoe will ask her sister, Wait, where is everyone?" And her sister will go, "Well, they all had their own, they all had their own engagements, so they couldn't exactly meet. So they couldn't exactly meet with you. They'll text you later." Then she looks at Zoe and goes, and immediately realizes that there is something's come up. And she asks her, "Is everything all right?" Zoe will go, I don't want to talk about it." The sister will accept it, back away, but then also ask, uh, if she wants if if she wants her family to, if she wants the remainder of her family to contact her, because she, the sister, was tasked with telling everyone when Zoe wakes up. Zoe obviously won't really say a thing, so or actually, I think she would say that she should be given like maybe 2 hours. I'm gonna say, and and then she walks out the door to start her day. And as she walks out the door, she actually sends a group text to her friends and says that, in order to tell them that she's been called up. And some of them are, some of them are astounded. I imagine the Willow stand-in will be astounded. The 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 typical boy will be, will potentially be somewhat skeptical, and the nerd boy will go, "Okay, now it's time to train you." Like it, if you really are the Slayer, you should be able to, you should be able to use your abilities, and also you might run into some, we might run into some trouble. And so they agreed to go to the park, an isolated, or rather a secluded area of the park, and start training. And I imagine the nerd boy would be her first instructor, and he would instruct her in eskrima, or using the eskrima sticks to fight. That lesson would I imagine would potentially not go very well because even if she has Slayer strength, she is still she is still very much a novice uh, in that regard. So so she would so she would slam the floor or slam the ground quite a few times. And it is after one of these slams that the Cordelia stand-in comes in and asks, "Oh, what's going on here? You training? Why? Have you been called? Why have you been called?" And her friends will be like, "Oh, it's none of her business. Get away. It's none of your business. Get away from here. We don't want you." Etc. She would, she would be skeptical because by this point she knows that there's something going on with them. Though I'm not necessarily sure if she really suspects any like Slayer business at this point within the, at this point within the series. Regardless, I do imagine her still gravitating around this group, either to expose them or to, or to join them for clout. Regardless of, regardless of what happens, I do imagine her having a character arc similar to, similar to the to Cordelia's original arc, but but that's a separate issue. Once training is over and and the new Scoobies go to go to the next part of their activity circle, we'll cut right back to the vampires who will say, who'll say something like, of course the new Slayer is called in Sunnydale. Why, why wouldn't she? Yeah, shouldn't, yeah, the other says. It shouldn't take us too long to infiltrate the city, a couple of hours. And then once they do so, they start, they trigger a whole bunch of emergencies, just hoping that eventually hoping to assess the new Slayer and potentially tire her out so that they can, no, potentially tiring her out so they can, uh, uh, so they can take advantage of her, take advantage of her when the time comes. And there are a few things that they try, but the one thing that does ultimately work uh, is when they ambush another woman in the park. Maybe not at night, but definitely uh, but at dusk. And it is at this point when they, after after the Scoobies will have already started their patrol, and they started in the park because reasons, that they hear the woman and show up to save her. Unbeknownst to them, however, the vampires also made some preparations, and that they didn't come by themselves either. They came along with, I think, three or four Mora demons. Now, and and it is these demons that they sick on the Scoobies while they leave with the while they leave with the woman. And of course, fight scene ensues, and I imagine the Scoobies would very much would very much get their asses handed to them at this point. For those of you who don't know, when Mora demons were first introduced, one of them was able to hold his own against, or their own, its own. Not exactly sure how gender works with these guys, but anyway, a single Mora demon was able to hold off both Buffy and Angel. So therefore, three of them are going to be a real handful to these. Going to be a real handful to to a freshly called upon Slayer uh, uh, and her Scoobies. So I imagine they could put up a fight against whatever number of Mora demons called up against them, but they would ultimately lose. They would ultimately get um, knocked down and defeated by the Mora demons, and just when the Moras are about to finish them off, one of them gets stabbed through the chest from the back, and and it is at this point that uh, that the rest of them, the rest of them move their attention away from the Scoobies and onto the one who, kill their ally, and they all fight that one assailant. And yes, it is one singular assailant. We don't we The audience won't get to see won't get to see directly who it is, because of because there will be various various tricks, close-ups to use to hide their identity. But I can say that the assailant will be a will be perhaps a slightly shorter than average for the for the U.S. woman, and wield a very distinctive red and silver bardiche. And once she is able to dispatch all of them, we'll then go in, we'll then get into the mo. She will, this fresh assailant will put the bardiche sort of resting like this over her shoulders, and we'll turn to the Scoobies, and then we'll get a reverse shot. The new Slayer will go, oh gosh, reverse shot. The assailant comes into the new assailant comes into frame and giving the audience a good view of her, and it will be Buffy Summers. Yeah, played by Buffy Summers, played by Sarah Michelle Gellar as she is right now. Going back to the shot, Zoe will go, "It's you," and then Buffy will retort by holding out her hand and going, "Hello, Slayer." Cut to black, potentially to be continued, then credits. Yeah, that is basically my idea for the pilot of the revival. These are the characters I would want to see included. These are the situations that I think would make the most sense if we are to establish this this new character, this new character, and this new cast, this new generation of the show. I very much hope you enjoy it, or even if you don't, that you at least see the point that I was trying to make. Assuming that to be the case, I would like to say thank you for your attention, and also please like the video, maybe even share it wherever you think other people will also like the video. If there is anything you'd like to add, either to the revival as you've after the revival as has been revealed through official sources, or with regards to my pitch for it, well, that is what the comment section is for. And if you want to see when my next video gets released, well then please subscribe. And ideally also ring the bell or do whatever else YouTube will ask of you in order to keep you notified. I also have a main channel where you can hear me talking about the print medium more broadly, but more specifically and much more often I actually talk about individual books, reviewing them. So if that sounds like it's something that would interest you, then I suggest you go ahead and check out the link to it in the description down below. Right past my social media links, which I also suggest you check out, should you choose to. If that is not necessarily of interest to you, well then I suggest you stay on this channel and go through my extensive backlog, primarily consisting of videos on television and cinema, but I also touch upon a variety of other topics, like gaming, politics, philosophy, history, etc. If none of what I've said is attention-grabbing to you, then I suggest you go ahead and do whatever you want the rest of your day, because it is your day after all. And yeah, that was all I had to say. Thank you once again for watching this video, and until next time, I have been the One Take Man.